So we're here at the Classical Association Conference in Durham, and it's with great pleasure that I may introduce Gabby Obodad of King's College London. Gabby, what is it that you work on?
I work primarily in the field of digital classics, so I work with the digitisation of ancient texts primarily, and my own interest is in inscriptions. So I've worked in the field of digitisation of inscriptions. I've been involved in the publications of inscriptions of Aphrodisias, inscriptions of Roman Tripolitania, Roman Cyrenaica, and various other epigraphic corpora. And I'm particularly interested, not so much in the implementation of the technology, because I'm from a classics background, not a computer science background, but in the ways in which digital publication, digital research, and digital analysis of works transforms the way classical scholarship is done and can enhance.
So can you give us some examples of how some of those ways are transforming the way we're doing classics?
Yes, well, the most obvious is in the dissemination, in publication. The digital publication, which by its nature is much more open access, much more commonly open access than print publication, opens texts and materials and publications up to a much wider audience. Not only in the terms of having a book that a larger number of people might be able to read and cite, which in itself is not an irrelevant point, but also in the sense of making primary materials available for more kinds of research and of analysis. So having the primary text available in large numbers, enabling various text mining and other kinds of computational and statistical analyses, which can lead to new academic questions being raised. Of course, the academics are, at least at the moment, are still people whose brains are made of carbon and grey matter, not made of silicon. We're not the computers are not doing the research for us, but if they can help us raise new questions and be better tools for us, that gives us more approaches, more inroads into our research materials.
And how do you think this way of doing classics will find a place within the discipline itself? And I ask this question because the digital classes here seem to be we kind of get marginalised and yes, very much kind of the techie geeky people, and I seem to have fallen into this myself.
Right.
And you then have the panel afterwards on epigraphy attracting hundreds of people. So
sure.
How are these different approaches going to come together, do you think? Is there a way of bringing the digital classics into mainstream classics?
Yeah, I think I think digital research is becoming more mainstream, but by the nature of things, as it does so, it gets less talked about. So we don't talk about the fact that we use word processing. We don't talk. Most scholars, every scholar who works on Greek text, for example, uses the TLG pretty regularly, and very, very few of them footnote the fact that that's what they've done.
Yeah.
They will say this word is used, only 6 times in classical antiquity before the 3rd century BC, and if they'd cited that from a book, they would say what book they got it from. They get that from the TLG. That's not a fact. That's an interpretation it's the TLG's interpretation of the data and your interpretation of the search you've done on the TLG and so forth. Not footnoting that is in many ways problematic. So as people start taking these things more for granted, they get less talked about.
Right.
So I think a lot of what we do just anyway as part of the traditional classical research would have been called digital classics 20 years ago, but now isn't anymore. So what we now call digital classics is again the cutting edge stuff. It's moving along, and some of that will make its way into the mainstream, some of it won't.
Yeah.
A more, I suppose, useful answer to your question, this may be more what you were getting at, is how can we get this discussion of technology and discussion of the methodologies into the mainstream of classics? Because classics is a very self-referential discipline in many ways. We do talk about critical theory quite a lot. We don't just use various theoretical approaches. We also talk about those approaches just to give one example, so there's no reason why we wouldn't do the same with the digital methodologies we use, and I think that is coming as well. I think we've we are finding more panels that turn up at conferences like the CA that are not marginalised as digital panels, but do have digital methodology as fairly core to the concern of the panel, such as the open access panel that Peter Heslin organised this morning, which didn't have digital anywhere its title, didn't have digital anywhere in the titles of any of the papers, but everybody was talking about exactly the same things that we talk about in digital classicist panels.
And what did you, and just maybe one last question, how did you find that panel?
It
not to put you on the spot.
No. I think it had a lot of promise. It did a very good job of doing the first thing that such a panel would have to do, which is to present a very bold and polemical viewpoint from each of at least two, and in fact there are many more than two, but positions on the spectrum of open access, evangelism versus very traditional publishing, for-profit models. What I guess, because of the model, the way this sort of conference works, there are 30-minute sessions, slots with 20-minute paper and 10 minutes for discussion. In practice, that's 2 minutes for discussion most of the time. We launched these 4 gladiators into an arena, and then we all walked out of the room before they started fighting. So they all stood there and postured for 20 minutes, and no one actually had the... And obviously it wasn't going to be a fight. I'm using a very poor metaphor, but...
although it would have made for a spectacle.
That could have made
maybe there should be an idea for future CAs.
That could work.
But I agree that the discussion time, I think, is invaluable, and that's something that we actually got in our session. It was a very good discussion time. And really, that was very serendipitous, because a speaker finished early.
Right.
So we had time then to discuss some of the issues.
My instinct in this case is to, and this maybe ought to be written into the way panels work, but until it is, my instinct is almost to have a fictitious 4th paper in a 4-paper panel. And then have the first 3 papers and say, oh, the 4th speaker didn't turn up, let's just discuss for half an hour. And that would actually be very valuable. I'm not proposing that I will do this dishonestly next year when I propose a panel, but...
be careful if Gabby invites you to be the 4th member of a panel.
But it might be if you have 4 slots, obviously, because of the nature of the multiple panels, you want people to be able to move between panels for the paper they're interested in. But there's, it might well be... without breaking that up, having a half-hour slot at the end, which is more a round-table discussion rather than a traditional paper, might fit within that, and might be something that people could propose to the conference organisers without breaking the model. I think that would be valuable.
That's great. Many thanks, Gabby, for such an interesting discussion, and with very wide-ranging ideas about the place of digital classics, and also how we can use maybe more traditional methods of just face-to-face discussion time much better at conferences. Many thanks.
Thank you.